to Transformation in Trials. Welcome to Transformation in Trials. This is a podcast exploring all things transformational in clinical trials. Nothing is off limits on the show, and we will have guests from the whole spectrum of the clinical trials community. And we're your hosts, Ivana and Sam.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Transformation in Trials podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Christian Born Djurhuus. Christian is somebody who's been prolific in the clinical trials industry for a number of years and has some really great views about the concept of applied technology. And we'll get to learn a lot more about Christian and his background as we get into the episode. Hi, Christian. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. We've been wanting to get you on the show for quite some time. You're pretty prolific on LinkedIn. You've got some strong and informed opinions on lots of different topics. For all episodes of Transformation in Trials, we try and theme the episode around a specific topic. And I think given your background and some of the areas that you have great interest in, we were going to theme today's episode around the topic of, is it time to rethink the waterfall approach to the pharma value chain? Let's get into it. And to kick us off, we have a pretty broad church in terms of our audience. So perhaps you could briefly describe in your own words, what is the pharma value chain?
Thanks, Sam. And by the way, I love the phraseology, church. Yeah. So pharma value chain for me, and I've been spending most of my time within the R&D space, but being interested and excited about how that R&D activity impacts real people out there in the various health systems, right? So for me, the pharma value chain starts, of course, with the research development part, but things cannot be, and this goes a little bit back to your topic of the theme. Things cannot just be tossed over the fence along the different parts of the value chain. So starting out in development, you have, of course, elements in development, data acquisition. So you have your design phase, blah, 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 all these kind of things that both you and your listeners are very familiar with, right? Protocol design, execution, reporting, analysis, submission. Then you have your pre-market activities in terms of medical affairs stuff. You have your commercial space. All of this constitutes the value. And that's the value chain of a pharma company in general. I think most have throughout decades tried to be more focused on how the commercial part of the value chain influences the development space. But they for natural reasons, they work in different cycles, right? If you want to be a little too cartoonish about it, the cycles of development are very long. The POAs of a commercial space is not that long. So there is this element of tossing things over the fence as part of a traditional pharma value chain.
What about waterfall then? Because some of our listeners will relate to that concept, particularly those.
That is waterfall, right?
Yeah.
If you have your specifications, you toss them over to those developing it. Mm-hmm. Then you have your verification. Then you toss it over to those that validate it. So that is in its essence a waterfall mentality, and it's very much brought about by this natural siloed infrastructure of a pharma value chain. Because it's most tech listeners that this is very contradictory to the agile mentality of having a team built of different skill types that as a team delivers upon the promises and increments, right? Mm-hmm. So of course there's natural contradiction between aiming at running drug development, device development in a agile manner, because there are natural things in terms of having it reviewed, but the mentality can add value, I believe, in terms of how you go about driving drug development.
This is an interesting topic for me, Christian, because working in the technology space, which was also operated in a waterfall manner for many, many years until we discovered that that was an inefficient way to do it. And now most technology is being developed in an agile way. Do you think that time has finally come for the pharmaceutical value chain to rethink how we do things? Or what are some of the barriers?
I think in general, many pharmaceutical companies have tried to do this for numerous years in terms of having program teams that are equipped with different people from different times, right? But I think we can amplify it, and I think we can amplify it in the sense that there are elements of incremental delivery which is part of how you do agile delivery, right? You don't just wait until the end and then you dump the big thing. You do it incrementally. I think that mentality can be embraced by pharma to a great extent that I've seen.
What are the downsides of this waterfall approach?
Honestly, they're not that different from when you do waterfall within technology, right? You have your ideas and you create your specifications of what you want to deliver, and then you go about building it to fit the specifications. And that takes a lot of time. And then you end up having your big software package delivered X number of months, years further down the road. And the delivery doesn't match the environment that you're in, right? So everything that you specified 3 years ago, they're not relevant anymore.
Yeah.
It's the same with drug development. I've been part of drug developments where those dreams were there for all the good reasons, and the time was taken to develop these things, but the commercial uptake didn't happen, right? So you spent your 3, 4, 5 years in your development program, dumped it, and then didn't fit the infrastructure. So how does pharma become better at listening to the needs? And that's where it becomes really tricky, because some software companies, or many software companies, they would have a very defined persona to develop towards. I wouldn't be able to tell you who the persona is in pharma, right? You obviously have the patients or people living with whatever condition. You have the health systems. They are extremely heterogeneous across the world. You have the physicians. And then you have your regulators. So who's your customer? And it probably changes depending on the therapeutic area. It changes on where's your market focused on. But I believe if you don't have a succinct understanding of what you're trying to achieve, then it becomes too blurry. But if you do that, then you can better tailor it to the customer needs.
And Christian, one of the reasons I think that we in life sciences are still very dependent on the waterfall approach is because it gives us this illusion of control. We can say that, well, we will develop this drug in 2 years, and then in 3 years, the device will also be ready, and these are the milestones, and we'll recruit these patients by this deadline. And adopting an agile way of working is also accepting risk and uncertainty on an ongoing basis. This is one of the things that I'm struggling with communicating to many stakeholders in pharma is we need to generally rethink the way that we think and also how we manage risk. Is that something you can recognize?
Yes, definitely. So I'm pretty simple. So I'll choose to reference 2 simple characters, right? One is Mike Tyson. And you've seen one of his quotes, everybody's got a plan until I punch them in the face. The risks will materialize. The other one, and this kind of gives away my age, is Eddie Murphy, Golden Child, right? He walks towards the golden dagger of Ajanti, but only if because he's so wise, he knows when to stray from the path, right? Otherwise, he would be dead. Right. So those pictures are for real, but it's not like risks don't materialize in traditional drug development, right? They do. It's just the illusion that we can pre-plan everything. So, and I'm not, neglecting the benefit of having a risk-based approach to everything we do within trial execution. It's a must because it gives a reference to the criticality of the issues that arise. But I think the starting point in what we have with also medically focused software development, right? Software as medical device things or technology applied in clinical research, the mentality of really understanding the users, be that patients participating in clinical trial, the investigators responsible for those patients, understanding their needs, and having that interaction is becoming increasingly critical. It's also something that FDA is stating in 21st Century Cures Act and patient-focused drug development, right, and spilling over to EMA. So pharma has to become better at understanding who is the customer. What are you trying to achieve? How can you describe that they're benefiting from it, from what you're trying to deliver, which is all sensible perspectives, right?
I like your the Mike Tyson quote there, Christian. As an ex-military man, I've got another similar kind of anecdote that fits that bill. It's no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So similar line.
Same. But that's the reason that agile is more valuable than waterfall, right? Mm-hmm. Because it cuts away the illusion that issues will arise. They will arise. Yeah. Trust me. I mean, everyone that is listening to this are from a clinical development perspective. They're struggling with figuring out how to manage a war in Ukraine still. Mm-hmm. And how do you deal with that when Ukraine's part of your development program, right? No one would have written that into a plan, but reality is there.
Do you think that's the increased focus on developing both devices, combination products, and both digital products, is that kind of spilling over into the classical drug development value chain? Is that where we're getting our agile thinking?
I mean, yes and no, right? So the development infrastructure, technology infrastructure, and transactional systems that feeds development processes, they are all agile today, right? I hope they are, but they are at least some version of agile. There's a religion happening within what's agile, right? But it's some degree of agile. But there is also the notion that this technology thing is actually having a huge impact of people's lives, and people are not just patients, right? They're people with all the lives that they have with their family relations and everything else, right? So is there a belief sprouting that technology and drugs in combination as patient solutions will create better health outcomes? Yeah, I think so. And that's definitely where how I see the world turning, right? If we imagine the health outcome value of an initiative, a drug development initiative, I think that can be augmented tremendously by having a combination with technology, right? And I see more mature health systems. Health systems across the world are extremely heterogeneous, but the more mature health systems, they're beginning to embrace these kind of things, and are also applying technology as how you treat patients in the real world, right? So I think patient solutions will be what we will be developing within pharma within the next few years.
I think that's quite a nice segue into the topic, or one of the buzzwords of the century, decentralized trials. So I know, just looking at some of the things that you post on social media around this topic, that you've definitely got some strong views on DCT, but perhaps some different perspectives versus what some are putting out there in terms of some of the face value benefits of DCT. Perhaps you could elaborate a bit more on that, Christian, for our audience.
So I see value of these technologies, DCTs included, as kind of a Maslowian pyramid of value. So like humans, there are some basic needs that need to be addressed. And of course, efficiency, time to market, I mean, I would consider those as being basic needs this day and age, right? I know it's not necessarily a reality, but everyone working in this industry must realize that becoming increasingly wiser day by day is kind of the new normal. So pursuing efficiencies and time to market is basic. The insights that you generate from this is going to be the more valuable targets going forward. So if we look at DCTs, I think it's not a binary thing, right? It's a hybrid thing that needs to be tailored to the research objective you're trying to achieve. So the way I would deploy DCTs would be vastly different in an Alzheimer program than a short stature program with kids, because the two populations are vastly different. So the value of these different elements are increasingly different, right? And then there's the element of generalizability that I really value. I think DCTs have the possibility to democratize access to clinical trials, because it's not that cumbersome to be part of a clinical trial. Or that's the ideal. It shouldn't be as cumbersome, and you shouldn't need to live in the vicinity of your clinical site. So democratization is essential for me. Then there's the other element, a little bit going back to what I mentioned before, that clinical trial patients are actually real humans. They have lives and families and everything else. So if we have that perspective that it's not just some data point you're capturing at in brick and mortar visit, but actually a data collection and insights into how they live and how you can benefit that life by your development, and using the real world lookalike aspects, the pseudo real world data that you can capture in patients' homes. I think those are the promises that I'm looking mostly forward to being able to harvest, and that I really see happening.
Maybe a follow-up question to that, but still taking us in a little bit of a different direction. Because thinking about decentralized trials and making it work for the specific indications, you also need a different kind of profile of a person who is able to both think about the drug mechanisms, but also thinking about data collection and the lives of the patient. Do you see that there's some sort of evolution of the people that we employ in our industry that needs to kind of be able to bridge both kinds of thinking?
I'll choose to defer back to what we just discussed about agile mentalities, right? So I've been a culprit of having a protocol design, right? So you hire a medical specialist because they are keen on figuring out how to design clinical programs. You have your statisticians working, you have et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's very much a kind of this is done. Now you toss it over the fence to execute it. And that's where your question becomes more an agile answer. Not everything that you put into a program. I think Tufts have research showing that 80% of the data points you capture are never going to be used, right? So not everything that comes out of the trial designers is gospel. A backlog mentality or value effort mentality is critical to employ in this part of the development phase, right? So this is the planning phase. Then we have clinical operation people. We have the ones who are actually CRAs. We have all of these kind of people who have insights into what's the effort associated with the value you're trying to achieve here, right? So then the discussion becomes more informed because you're having a value effort discussion. And then you prioritize and say, okay, this doesn't hit the thresholds in terms of the value we're trying to achieve relative to the effort associated with it. You slice it away. That's the discussion I would really want to see going forward. And that's more an agile mentality, because who assesses value, right? That's on the that's whomever is the customer. Then you can try to ask them, or you can have your discussions with your commercial people. Can this sell? And then it's for them to ask whether it can sell or whatever, right? But that's the agile mentality that needs to be brought in. Very, very few commercial people are interested in the protocol elements, and yet the protocol elements are there to define value, and then the red tape or the effort associated with it, relationship, right? But if I mean, it's not a medical specialist that decides value.
But also there's something to understanding the entire value chain, because if you work in one part of the value chain and you do not understand how what you're designing in the protocol ends up in the health technology assessment or something, you may not be able to think all the way through.
And then you talk to each other. But you're absolutely right. That's part of it. But that's another. We had Alistair Coburn visiting. He's one of the founders of the Agile Manifesto, right? And the guy needs to make a living now, so he has the heart of Agile. And lo and behold, it's about talking to each other. Not
revolutionary. Yeah.
Really revolutionary, right? And then you try and iterate, et cetera, et cetera. But it's the communication and curiosity towards the different players in this value chain that will give you the value.
What's your perspective on silos, Christian? And you can take this in whichever direction you want. People, process, technology, culture. I think listening to you, it kind of ties into some of the challenges you've been discussing.
But it's a little bit back to the discussion we had about waterfall, right? Because silos are usually created because it's the silos of the different parts of the value chain, whereas it's the ability to traverse the value chain that gives the ultimate outcomes of your activity. So I'm not. I mean, silos are human nature.
There are probably lots of people out there who want to, I don't know, do fantastic things and save the world, etc. But then there are others who just want to turn up and do their job, basically.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Bezos calls it missionaries and mercenaries, right? He stole it from someone they can't remember, but it's and I have so many biases that I have no idea about. But I do have one in terms of I'm having much more fun working with missionaries than I do with mercenaries.
Interesting.
You're right.
On that note, then we talked a lot about waterfall, agile, some of the problems that you've experienced, or your reflections of problems in the pharma value chain. Tell us a bit more about yourself and your career in this industry, so we get a sense as to how you've come to these perspectives.
Sure. Well, I've been within pharma for a couple of decades. I would label myself as being. I mean, I'm a medical doctor by background with a PhD within endocrinology. But prior to that, I was a vivid geek. So I'm kind of I'm a hybrid between someone who loves technology, but is eagerly determined to bring the value of technology towards helping humans. So that's why that's what I believe in. I've been medically responsible for various development programs from phase 1 through phase 4, global data across various therapeutic areas. Because I've been a geek and because I believe that so this is, I mean, if you use Gardner's definition of digitalization, it's the value of digitization to bring business value. Right. So for me, digitalization is kind of a domain-specific thing. If you don't understand the domain, it's very hard to create value. So based on my verbal persona around the use of technology to drive business, I was asked 4 years ago to lead a digital transformation process within the space of clinical development, and that has been super fulfilling. So that's kind of me. So drug developer, I've also had the responsibility of combination devices. So I'm fairly savvy within drug development, fairly savvy within device development, and then sprinkle with digitalization on top. That's me.
Very cool. We have a fairly strong technology bias in terms of our listeners to the show. I'm curious to hear what technology out there is exciting you at the moment. Not necessarily brand names, but more kind of sectors and parts of technology. Anything catching your eye?
I mean, everyone would be ostracized if we weren't paying attention to the race around ChatGPT and Bard. So those kind of things. I'm actually. This is fun, right? So we all work in an industry that usually takes years, if not decades, from thought to value, right? And here we have ChatGPT coming out in December. Yes, they worked on it, and yes, they were working on 4, but it was like a 6-month interval between the release of ChatGPT 3.5 to 4. And it's March 31st when we're recording this, right? And 3 days ago, Elon Musk and 1,000 other thought leaders within the application of AI into something that this is going too fast. So if you look at Future Life and their statements of Future Life, let's put a pause to it because this is the Wild West. We cannot control this impactful technology. So to answer your question, AI on the existing data based on large language models is, of course, the hot topic of what we had here in March 31st, 2023. But it hasn't really yet hit the part of the world that we're talking to.
It is exciting to see when we release this episode what has happened in the incremental time between March and when this episode comes out, ChatGPT wise.
Yeah, but that's the scary part, right? And that's also a little bit back to how we work in different cycles. Health care and health institutions also work in different cycles. Most of the products that we in big pharma are developing will have their first touch points to humanity in a US, European, Japanese world, right? That's just the name of the game. But I've been part of supporting launches of products that had 15 years under their belt, right? So in other parts of the world, those are novel. So they work in different life cycles, and similar does technology. But the interesting part is that technology is moving by a far greater pace than anything we've been seeing before. George Westerman, who's a professor at MIT, Sloan, and he's written a fantastic book about digital transformation, has some cool remarks. He reflects on Moore's law and the ability to technology to double every 18, 24 months, right? We just saw something that he had a 500-fold impact within a 6-month period. So Moore's law is being violated these days. George Westerman has something he calls George's law, stating that, yeah, technology moves really fast. Organization moves much more slowly. Mm. So the crux for me is how do we make organizations embrace this fast moving technology to a greater pace? And remember, it's not technology for the sake of technology. The purpose has to be there. But for me, my heart's still beating for helping people with whatever condition the therapeutic initiatives upon. But I'm a firm believer that technology is going to take a massively greater impact on health outcomes than what we can imagine today.
We've had another guest on the show comment that usually innovation in pharmaceutical companies moves at the pace of meetings, and that's why it's so slow.
I've been a part of it's programmed. It's a little bit back to Mike Tyson's statement, right? You have a plan, and in this plan, it says that between October and something, we innovate. So 1, 2, 3, innovate, and then okay, we're done. And then 1 year after we innovate, it's the world doesn't work that way.
I'm also curious, talking about the different cycles in the industry. The healthcare space moves at one cycle as technology moves fast. Then we have life sciences moving at its own pace. Do you have any thoughts of how we could synchronize the paces at least once in a while?
I don't think we need to synchronize. We need to figure out what's the fastest moving train. Mm. And in parts, our audience is technology freaks, right? So the HIMSS or HIMMS, whatever it is, about health EHR maturity, right? So you have these classification in terms of EHR maturity. There are institutions, predominantly US, but spilling over as Europe slowly embraces stuff, that are vastly more advanced and have the ability to analyze data to a much greater extent than any pharma company would ever be able to, right? Because they have verified their data models. They have insights into all the patients that they're serving. They have their drugs. They have their conditions. They have their outcomes. everything in there to make their educated opinion about what they want to support. Those are, in my mind, the fastest moving trains in our industry. So if pharma needs to catch up, that's the mentality they need to hook up to. I've been privileged to visit PBMs. This is like 5-6 years ago, where what they had of insights into the patients they were supporting for their customers was vastly more deeper than what I'd ever seen within pharma. So if pharma is lagging behind their customers, it's an issue. So I believe there's a catch-up to be had.
And Christian, just to change direction slightly, you left Novo Nordisk recently. How are you keeping yourself busy? Because you don't strike me as the sort of individual who's spending his days playing golf, for example.
No.
Or maybe you are.
No, I'm not. I wouldn't know how to play golf. This is like I've rediscovered the value of a sabbatical. When I grew up, all university professors, I think it was every 7 years or something like that, they had a year to kind of reignite, redive, and refocus. So I'm using this as a sabbatical. This is now 4 months since I stopped, right? And it's been great being able to actually spend time in diving into things that are dear to my heart, and get my head around that. Then obviously I'm also trying to figure out so what's up next. So I have never drunk as much coffee or have as many lunches as I've had in the past 4 months. So that's keeping me busy.
That's a great way to spend time, coffee and lunches.
Coffee and lunches.
Welcome to my world.
A little bit of exercise. The most exciting week was 3 lunches in 1 week. So that was fun.
So I think as we draw to the end of this episode, which has been a really great one, by the way, we always ask our guests the same final question, and that is, if you could wave a magic wand to change one thing about our industry, what would that be and why?
Yeah. So I alluded a little bit back to it in my former statement. So let's start out by saying Peter Drucker is absolutely on point. Culture will eat strategy for breakfast, period. We just spoke of George's law and how organizations would move so much more slowly. If I had a magic wand, and I love watching Harry Potter with my kids, so it's not that far-fetched. I do have a wand somewhere. I think it's Hermione's. I would.
It's the best one.
Yeah, I would. She's also the most awesome. I would use it to kind of bring culture more in tune with technology development. As I mentioned, I believe in the value of technology to support humans in how they live. Also, when suffering from various diseases, right? If only we were able to not be bound by our legacy thinking, which is another way of saying culture, we would be able to embrace that technology to its better use much quicker. So my magic wand would be what was this? Oblivious? It sounds nasty, right? But something that would immediately remove legacy thinking. Not Wild West as Elon Musk is advocating against these days in terms of the AI we just spoke of, but thoughtful utilization of technology where it's not, no, we haven't done it before, it must be wrong thinking, but more this we can see the value of in terms of what we're trying to achieve. Let's use it. So that kind of magic one I would dream of having.
Very good. And must request that you bring the physical magic wand to the next podcast episode, please.
I can do that, definitely.
Brilliant. Well, look, this has been a fantastic episode, Christian. I know that our listeners are going to want to potentially reach out to you and connect and learn more about what you're up to. So where's the best place for them to do that?
I think I'm more reachable on LinkedIn. That would be my preference. I'm not expecting my my email to I have my business email is my current consultancy company. I'm not expecting that to be alive all that long. So LinkedIn is much more effective.
There we go. So hit Christian up on LinkedIn. Thanks, Christian, very much for this opportunity to speak to you about how we rethink the waterfall approach to the farmer value chain and many other topics that we got into. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a delight speaking with you guys.
You're listening to Transformation in Trials. If you have a suggestion for a guest for our show, reach out to Sam Parnell or Ivana Rosendahl on LinkedIn. You can find more episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or in any other player. Remember to subscribe and get the episodes hot off the editor.